Here's the thing that has been so deeply moving for me, in working with people who've experienced traumatic events. The journey to heal um, is often blocked by something that was hard to name. Years ago, this opportunity came because I designed this new table in my office, and the table has like a central glass part to it and an outer wooden rim. And in this field I work in, interpersonal neurobiology, it became clear that integration looked like it was the base of health. And consciousness also seemed to be necessary for change. So then I said to my patients, well, what if we integrate consciousness, which would mean differentiating like the knowing of consciousness, of being aware, from the things that are known, like what you hear or see or taste or touch, or what you think or feel or remember, or what your body feels, or your sense of connection to the world. So we would put all those different knowns on the rim, divide them into 4 parts, and there was a spoke that looked like it was this part of the table holding the table up, and we'd call it the spoke of attention. No one wanted to call it the table of awareness, so we called it the wheel of awareness, and it was a way to integrate consciousness. And I do a lot of work with people who've been traumatized in childhood, and so slowly we would, explore what it was like to sit in the hub of that wheel, the hub of being aware, and become empowered to move the spoke from hearing to seeing to smelling to tasting to touching. And if anything ever came up that was disturbing in the setting of therapy, we could pause and, explore that in a therapeutic, gentle way of seeing what the meaning of it was. Then you move the spoke over to the second segment of the rim, which is the interior of the body, the sense of muscles and bones and, internal organs and genitals, right? So if you can imagine when people have been sexually abused, this is difficult to do, but there was something very powerful, as much as it could be upsetting, let's say, to focus on your genitals if you were sexually abused. We would go away from that, do some building of internal resources to be able to get to a calm, peaceful place, and then return to that. And as the hub of being aware became more differentiated or distinguished from the rim of that which you are aware of, in this case, the sensations of your genitals, there was this really powerful way where a person could realize whatever the distressing feelings that might come up, there were also neutral feelings or pleasant feelings, and they could then have more than one thing happen on the rim, so that usually we get taken over by a singular thing on the rim, like an upsetting memory of something that happened to us with sexual abuse. But now that this integration process allowed this person who I was working with to become empowered, that I see I don't have to become that memory. Often, it would be what's called an implicit memory, which means it wouldn't have the usual tagging of something called explicit memory, which says, oh, I'm remembering something from the past. Implicit memory in its pure form, which I think is what trauma does, is isolate this processing into a form of memory that when it's activated, feels like it's happening in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And that's a hypothesis from back in the early 90s, but it was basically a hypothesis that said that the reason we can have flashbacks is because you can have pure implicit memory that when it's activated isn't tagged as something coming from the past. So that was very helpful to clarify that. So with a client I'm working with, when they're in the hub and something comes up as if they're being sexually abused and assaulted right then, another part of them, it's called dual focus of attention, another part of them could be on their focus of it, that they're sitting with me in the room. Mm-hmm. And another part feels like they're being sexually abused, and another part feels like they're being with me. And we can distinguish those so they can be in the present while also exploring an implicit memory, which, because it's purely implicit, it doesn't have a sense of past or future or anything. It's just in the present moment. So now they know that, and they can now use parts of their brain system to actually now process that explicitly and turn that into an explicit memory of an event. That's a whole other story. But in terms of the hub, this hub becomes a sanctuary. Now, we then go to the third segment of the rim, which is about mental activities like memories and emotions and things like that. And for a number of people, it would become very upsetting when they would turn the spoke around right into the hub. And in the book Aware, you'll see why that's probably the case. But the good news is that while you dive into this very spacious place of uncertainty, and there's a reason I think it is filled with uncertainty, pure awareness, it's also, for reasons we can't get into just in this setting, but in the book I go and spend 100 pages talking about the following two sentences. I'll say, open awareness looks like it comes from a place of basically an energy probability position of maximal uncertainty. And so for someone who's been abused or neglected, maximal uncertainty is to be avoided at all costs. Mm-hmm. But when you look at this graph, that place of maximal uncertainty is also the place of other options. It's kind of this plane of possibility or sea of potential where your other choices are sitting. So when you're lost on the rim, which we call these plateaus and peaks on this diagram, you're actually unintentionally protecting yourself with a sense of certainty that's actually imprisoning you.
Right.
And, this sadly, on the one hand, is a sort of self-imposed prison created by the trauma for sure, but then maintained by your own mind. That the good news is, for every person I've worked with who's been traumatized and we've done the Wheel of Awareness as a therapeutic step, what initially may have been terrifying in the hub as this vast plane of possibility that felt so uncertainty, they would keep themselves up on these, what we call plateaus, that said, no, I can't go to uncertainty. When they had the step of dropping into the hub and of being in this plane, when they could experience the plane itself, there was no panic. The panic was an adaptive, defensive, imprisoning reaction. The hub, this plane of possibility, was filled with its synonym, which is freedom and possibility. Mm. So that's where this incredible ease of well-being started emerging, where people could understand what it meant to say, bring it on. That when they could access the hub, think about it this way, and I start the Aware book this way, a lot of people have been traumatized are trying to avoid that open awareness of that's uncertainty. We didn't know that, but this view suggests why it's uncertainty. And in that avoiding it, you make your awareness container like the size of an espresso cup. So when life dishes out a stressor that's like a tablespoon of salt, you can't drink the water because it's too salty. But when you do the Wheel of Awareness practice or other practices like it, you expand that espresso cup size container to be like 100 gallons big. So now when life dishes out that tablespoon of salt and dumps it into your 100 gallons of water, Andy, what would it taste like?
Not much of anything. Maybe a tiny bit salty, but that's it.
That's it. Just fresh water pretty much. And so you can live because now your container is bigger. So once people get through the imprisoning plateau that warded off uncertainty for understandable reasons, and they can drop into this hub, that's the metaphor of a wheel, but there's a mechanism called the plane of possibility. Once they access that, everything shifted. Because now when stuff would pop up on these plateaus and peaks in the diagram, will be the rim in the wheel practice metaphor, they were ready because they had the 100 gallons that they had built. And now stuff comes up from memory, or stuff comes up now in interaction with people or plans for the future, whatever. There's this kind of sanctuary of clarity, of possibility, of freedom that many people who've been traumatized have never felt before. Everything's always tight because they always had to protect themselves, of course. Right. So it's a way of shifting literally how consciousness is integrated so that the hub becomes differentiated from the rim. You're no longer living only on one part of the rim and afraid of other parts, but you have the full array of hub and rim available to you. So this bring it on attitude is, I went for a walk with one of the people I worked with years ago, and it was so beautiful to go for a walk with her. It's been years since she was working with me as a patient. but you should see the ease that
Mm.
she was in her step and the smile on her face, because she's achieved, using the wheel and other things, she's achieved this spaciousness of being that is, I think, everyone's birthright, and nothing can take it away from you. And doing the work to resolve trauma, is exactly what that this journey can be all about.